Hello there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. I'm Clark Cahill, Events Manager with the South China Morning Post, and I'm joined today by Naima Charlier, who is the Director of Teaching and Learning at Anglia International School, Hong Kong. And she is here today to discuss a topic that continues to grow in importance and interest for parents, teachers, and students alike, which is the notion that students need to learn and acquire 21st century skills. So 21st century skills can come across as quite a broad term, undefined term. So could you start off by telling us a little bit about what 21st century skills even are and why are they important?
Absolutely. So there isn't one definition of 21st century skills, but there's lots of research and lots of studies about what students are going to need in the future. So what are employers looking for in the workforce of tomorrow? What might the jobs be like? And how are we going to make sure that the education we're offering at the moment is going to equip them for those skills? So there are lots of different things that people talk about. There's some great papers. The World Economic Forum came up with one quite recently, and they did some lovely research where they showed what schools were doing to develop children's ability to be prepared. So things like, we know that the computers are adapting and changing, and technology is getting better and better at doing many things that people used to do. So jobs are becoming automated, things that people used to do by themselves are being done now by artificial intelligence. So then what elements of it in education and for children do they need to be better at that the computers will never be able to do? So being better at being human is the kind of global thing that I would say, just those skills that make us really special. So things around empathy, understanding, communication, being able to talk to other people and understand and build relationships are things that it's very hard to replicate with technology. So there's a really nice 4Cs example that many people talk about, which is collaboration, critical thinking, communication, and creativity. So often schools will talk about those as being key parts of 21st century skills. Alongside that, we also know that the world is becoming more interconnected, that there's a great need for children to understand diversity and to be inclusive, to understand different perspectives, and to be able to communicate from people from different backgrounds. So that's where having children working together with children from different backgrounds and different countries and different languages is really important. And those 4C skills, when we develop them in school, they can look like many different things. I mean, we'll take collaboration. When we're teaching something in school, we might look for a chance to make that a collaborative piece of work rather than something they do by themselves. So how do they work in a group? How do they work in a team? And not just putting them in a group or a team, but actually teaching them the skills that lead you to do that well. And as adults, we know if you're going to work with other people, you're going to need to do a bit of give and take. You're going to need to gather people's ideas. You're going to need to set timelines and jobs and divide the work and be stronger as a team than separately. All of that isn't simple. You have to teach it. So breaking down each of those steps and making that something you do in school is a really important thing. Critical thinking is a great one. I teach students who are 15 and 16, and I teach them a course called Global Perspectives. It's an IGCSE Cambridge course. And part of that is these 4 skills. It's all about the skills they need for the future. There's no content they have to learn. There's nothing they can revise. It's a skills-based course. And I asked them about critical thinking. Do they think they need to do it all the time? And it was really interesting because they said to me, seems a bit hard. Not sure that we should do it all the time. And it was interesting. So, but critical thinking is just, you don't take it at face value, especially now when all our information is coming from all these different forums and platforms. So teaching them about, well, what is the source of the information that you're getting your ideas from? How strong is it? Where is it from? Is there bias involved? Who's written it and at what point? So again, those skills need to be taught. And critical thinking can come into play in so many different areas when you put the children together to work out a problem rather than just present the content of the curriculum. And I'll give you another example from a physics class I'm very lucky. I get to go and see teachers teach all the time at my school, and one of our IB teachers was teaching 17-year-olds physics. But he'd put them into teams, and then he'd put these special locked boxes with all these different codes and keys, and they had to work out together how to solve the problems in order to open the boxes. And then once they managed to do that, the equipment in the box related to an experiment. But they had to come up with the question of the experiment, the design of the experiment, as well as how they were going to solve it, as well as layered on top of that, working together and doing all that collaborative things I was talking about before. So layering learning like that is a really important part of the skills that we're talking about. So we've got communication, collaboration, critical thinking. I think communication we're all very well aware of, and then creativity. So one of the great examples of around creativity is, well, there's no one way to do anything, and if we think about the future and the problems that we're all facing and how we're going to solve all of those problems, it's people who can think of new ideas, new ways of thinking, to come up with possible different solutions using all the different knowledge that they might have, and be really really elastic in their thinking. So again, building children's ability to do that is really crucial.
Sure. So yeah, that really fascinating stuff. I mean, you just touched on so many things: critical thinking, empathy, diversity, creativity. I think a lot of people might think of 21st century skills as technology as well, which you did briefly touch on, I think, at the start there. So when it comes to technology, what role do you think technology should play in a child's education?
Absolutely. I mean, as technology is evolving and changing, and we see that trajectory, it's getting more sophisticated, and it's every year that passes, there are more things it can do. So of course we need to teach children about technology. So we have technology that we can use ourselves within our teaching. So we can teach them using these tools that allow us to reimagine learning. So we can do things that we could never have done before, using things like augmented reality. So a great lesson with some year threes where they were looking inside the body, and they had an augmented reality vest on that allowed them to see the actual organs and see where they would go and move them around. That's something that wasn't possible before. So you have the idea that technology as a tool can allow us to do very sophisticated things with the students to support their learning. And then you have the idea of technology as being this tool that's out there, and we need to teach the children about it. So it's not a case of just using it because we can, but it's a case of, well, how do we use it safely? What are the pitfalls? What are the things that are really important in terms of how we communicate with each other using technology? And we found that with the recent pandemic and online teaching, we had to teach our children a curriculum of how to use emojis and how to use online group meetings, like what's okay and what's not okay. So teaching 5 and 6 year olds that we might have taught, you don't shout out, and if you say such and such thing to this person, they're going to be sad. So now we're on, well, if you put a sad face on an emoji that you've written, how's that person going to feel, and what's the purpose? So we have this whole curriculum around how do we use the tools in the right way, and they're going to take that through as they go through life, because we have we have all these tools, everybody's using them, they are part of life, but there's ways that they can benefit us, and there's also things that we need to make sure they're safeguarded against and they have a good understanding of. So making sure that it's not just something we do because we have it, but it's purposeful and it can add value is really important.
Sure. So, I think a lot of parents have concerns over, especially for younger children, about the amount of screen time that their children are encountering. So where's that balance between obviously introducing technology into a child's education, but at the same time maybe trying to reduce the amount of screen time per day that a child is encountering?
Absolutely, and I think we've all been thinking about that so much with the recent time that we've been through, where we've had to use this tool. But if we go back to an ordinary classroom day, we're only using the technology tools when they're going to add that additional value or when they're part of the curriculum. Aside from that, I think for children to be outside in the environment, to actually touch things, to build and construct with their hands and to work things out physically in the environment is going to be a better way for them to learn. The tools and the technology that we have can give us so many different things, but it is about that balance, and it's about really being aware and being purposeful when we choose to use things and when we don't. Some of the benefits that we have though as teachers are just incredible, because what technology allows us to do is to assess where a child is, what they understand and what they don't understand in seconds for a whole class of children, so that you can then take each one of those children and move them to the next bit of their learning. That's super powerful. So we have this capacity to do that, and that's really exciting, and that makes our teaching better, but it can happen alongside of what the children are actually doing.
Sure. So we're digging in, obviously, again to 21st century skills, talking, very future forward looking. But what about the more traditional things, math, reading, science? Do they still have a place in the education curriculum?
They absolutely do. The traditional subjects are essential, and I think sometimes there's a bit of confusion around what we mean by 21st century skills and where the different things fit in. But if you think about the idea of knowledge and then skills sitting side by side, there is a need to have knowledge. Of course there is. We have to learn to read, and we have to learn to write, and we have to learn our maths and our science. There's some basic things that we all need. But that canon of knowledge actually changes and needs to change depending on where we are in the world, what our context is, and also the amount of balance we give over to the knowledge versus the skills is something that we have to look at very carefully, because if we spend all of our time getting better at things that a computer can do a millisecond, then there's going to be an issue, whereas we need to balance it and make sure that we're layering the things that we learn and we teach. My example of our great physics teacher, because the things that we're looking for, the things that are going to make happy adults in 2050 when they're able to go from job to job to job, change role, train themselves, retrain, when they're able to do all those things, that's what's going to be really powerful. Their ability to work out their multiplication tables really quickly, or to know key facts about events in history, is going to become less of a useful skill than being able to come up with a really creative idea that they've just thought of and present it to somebody with confidence and credibility, and be able to engage with someone they've not met before and maybe comes from a different background, and see their perspective and jump on that. So all of those things that were kind of thought of as, well, they'll happen and they're soft skills and maybe they're not as important. It's about making sure they are deliberately in the curriculum, and that they're assessed and they're taught and they're scaffolded and they're modelled, and teachers are looking and saying, okay, it's not just that you didn't understand your 7 times table, it's actually you're not brilliant at sharing, so what can we do to help you to get better at sharing? Or you're not brilliant at speaking up with your ideas, you don't seem very confident with that. Let's see what we can do about that, and let's design and plan some teaching and learning that's going to get you better at that, so that when we're talking about the education of a child, it's that holistic view, all these different parts of it that are going to make them future ready, not just the thing that they can achieve on a maths paper that hasn't changed in 200 years, or a history paper for a very selective piece of history that's connected to a particular country in the world, where actually, which bit of history are we going to teach? There's an awful lot within the world. So teaching, I mentioned the class that I teach, one of the things I teach them is the world is super complicated, everything's super complicated, and there's vast amounts of information at your fingertips. So yes, you do need to think critically all the time, and you've got to know how to find out what you want to find out, learn what you need to learn, work with the people that you want to work with, because who knows what's waiting for you. But those skills, if you could do those things, you're going to have lots of success and be happy.
Makes sense to me. So I just have one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
To all of the parents that are watching, what advice can you give them as to the role that they can play in helping to future-proof their child's education process.
Absolutely, and I don't think it changes massively. The advice I always have for parents tends to be around spend time with your children, value what they have to say, model things that are really important, like reading, model that you have good relationships with other people, make sure that your children have as much time as possible that you can give them for things like eating a meal together, going outside, and outside is super important. So especially if you've got little children, go to the beach, go to the park, go to the museums, walk around, go on the bus, go on the tram, talk, engage with your child, hear them, spend time with them, see what they're interested in, what their passions are, which will change all the time probably, and really spend time letting them tell you about their passions and building on those. Those kinds of things will help your child to build confidence, and they'll help your child to just do better in all aspects of life. So it's really about making sure that you're giving your time to your children, and that they're spending that time with their family, doing things that are wonderful and lovely family things. This is brilliant use of time, and this is going to make happy children who hopefully love school, love learning. So I think that's a big thing for the future. If you love learning and you can learn by yourself, you know how to learn, then when you're off getting your job and your job keeps changing or you've got to retrain in something, you've got those skills and you're able to do that. So I think parents that boost a child's self-esteem and get them confident to be able to do anything that's thrown at them, that's really good.
Great stuff. So how can people find out more about Nord Anglia and what you guys are doing in the realm of 21st century skills?
Absolutely. You can come and see us at NordAngliaInternationalSchool.com. You can just go to the website, and then from there you'll be able to make an appointment to come and see the school, or come and have a tour, come to an open morning, and come and see the school in action, our amazing students and teachers, and all this exciting learning that they're doing.
Great. Thank you so much, Naima, for sharing your time and all of your thoughts about 21st century skills. And we hope everyone enjoyed that session. We look forward to welcoming you to the next one. Thank you, everyone.